Well, welcome everybody to today's webinar on surviving and thriving through the COVID challenges. And we're going to focus today quite a lot on virtual leadership. I'm just waiting for one or two other people to join us. So if you could just bear with us for a second, we will be good to go shortly. Could you just put your hand up if you can hear me? That would be great, just briefly. Great, thank you, Gary. Can see that, that's wonderful. Great, okay, well, let's crack on. So just to get a feel as we move forward, as we always say on these events, just so people are aware what we're doing, our goal is to provide every organisation in Yorkshire with the valuable support and help we need. And right now, it really doesn't matter how we do that and whether or not people can afford it or not. We're going to provide as much as we can when we can. And these webinars, as you will know, are every Monday, Wednesday, Friday now, because we want to help as many as people as we can through these challenges. So please make sure you keep coming onto them and learning from them. Now, just an idea, it'd be great just to understand how people are feeling right now, just the general feelings, and maybe rate yourself out of 10 in how you're feeling. Maybe just give us a mark and just a general term about how we're feeling right now. Just check the chat button. Okay, we've got an 8. Challenges ahead, Gary, but also opportunities, 7 out of 10. Great. Okay, well, let's see if we can get that up to let's see if we can get that up by the end of this session, Gary. That would be great. And everybody else, cool, Mark. Yeah, we'll try and get you up to a 9, and we will crack on. Okay. So, one of the things on our Wednesday webinar, we just highlighted a few things that we believed people should be on with right now. So, planning, make sure we've got a 90-day plan in place. We'll have another 90-day planning session probably on Tuesday of next week. So if you're able to do that, come for the afternoon and make a proper plan. We're going to talk about leadership today, because how we lead people is going to be different in this new environment. Now, whether or not there are team members, our stakeholders, this is absolutely true of clients and suppliers. How we operate in an online and virtual world is different to how we would normally operate, because we don't have that physical and visual presence that we typically had when we would walk into an office or walk into a client's premises or a supplier's premises. Obviously, we want to be we also be looking at finances. Do we have cash flow forecasts in place? Are we looking at the business interruption loans? Maybe looking at our overdraft situation. Looking at our team reallocation, etc. Looking at marketing, how that pivots, and we've had a couple of sessions, one this morning, on looking at our marketing, how we pivot that if we need to into new markets and new channels. Sales, yeah, again, how we sell might be different. And finally, us, and this is relevant to today as well, how we looking after ourselves, both as a person, as a human being, and as a leader. Because basically for us, our business is a reflection of ourselves. So if we're fit and healthy and active and driving, then our business will be too. So it's really important that we think about some of those key things, and we'll have sessions on all of those things moving forward. Today we're going to focus on leadership and remote leadership, and how that changes and how different that might be over time. Now, something that this might be useful for ourselves, but also potentially it's worth thinking about for our teams. Right, excuse me, guys. Can we just take a hold? Mark, are you there?
I am, Chris. Yeah, I'm here.
I've had a text from Jason saying the webinar link isn't working, and there's a message to say the host is in another meeting. So, uh, can you let me know?
I think, Charlie's just texted me. He sent the wrong link out, so I'm having to just quickly email everyone. Do we want to hold for sort of 5 minutes while I'll just have to resend it to everybody?
Okay.
Because he said his emails have gone. Charlie's just sent me an apology. He goes, Mark, I've just put the Wednesday one, not the Friday one. I'm really sorry.
Okay. Just get on with it. That's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll do that. Sorry, Chris. Yeah.
Gary and Kelly, apologies for this. We just had, as you do, we've had a slight tech challenge, as you can probably hear. So the link you've got is the correct one. So welcome, you're the right people on the call. Would you be okay if I could just get a show of hands or a yes or no in the chat box that you're okay just to hold? Kelly's in. I can see you there, Kelly. David, I think we're just starting to get people come in. Would it be okay if we just hold? We might just go back to the start of the presentation if you're okay with that. Which means we'll probably overrun by about 10 minutes. Is that okay for you, Gary? Thank you so much. Hopefully, Kelly, that's okay with you too. I do apologise, although we are in the new world, and this is just a great example of, in the new world, things we need to be wary of, and build up our technical capabilities, but also accept that sometimes things do go slightly wrong. So on that basis, I'm just going to run this back for a second. But what I'm going to do, actually, Gary and Kelly and David, would just while you're in right now, it'd be good to understand what challenges you see. That's fine, David, welcome on board. But it'd be good for you to let us know. And David, if you could maybe address your comments to all panelists and attendees, just so everyone can see them. What challenges do you face in the leadership you're seeing right now? I know, Kelly, you're in a new role with a new team, which in itself is a challenge. But also how you see the online changes being an issue for you guys. Anything that you've already experienced? Thanks, David, that's great. Anything you're experiencing or any concerns or fears that you might have of trying to lead people, as I say, whether that's your team, could be customers, could be suppliers, could be stakeholders, in this new environment. If you've got any questions, if there's a little chat box on your toolbar with a speech bubble, so if you're able just to make any comments or notes, that would be great. If you'd like to, if you don't like to, that's all cool. That's all good too. I'm just going to start on the basis I'm expecting to have one or two people join us. I'm just going to go back. Actually, let's just go back slightly. I don't think we need to go much past here, so let's just go back to here, guys, and we'll just wait to see if there's anyone else joining us shortly. Kelly, great. I was concerned at first, but I'm finding that Zoom and other communication channels do become the norm after a while. We are increasingly using Zoom for face-to-face. Yeah, Kelly, it definitely does. Charlie, can you watch your language, please? That is going to everybody. It is actually not a lot more easy than you think. What we're going to talk about today is just things you need to consider that are different to just being the different nuances of leadership remotely. So hopefully that'll be useful for you and the other guy. Online is a positive step and works well for my business. Yeah, great, Gary. I mean, it's a massive opportunity. We're seeing it all through a lot of our clients in terms of their marketing, the sales, and the delivery of products and services. Is that there's a potential, there's real potential for growth in what we do. Okay, so we've got a few more people on the call. So just guys, maybe just before we start, thanks for coming on board, and apologies for the slight change with the link. David saying, unfortunately, online, will it work for us? Great. Well, let's talk about that, David. So just think about the challenges you might face, and we'll go through them. And welcome, Christopher and Amin. Thanks for coming on board. So just a quick, if we could just do another quick comment in the box for everybody, and if you could do it to all panelists and attendees, that would be great. Is just firstly how you feel out of 10 and any description of that. So you might feel positive and it's an 8, you might feel a bit challenged or fearful and it might be a 4, but just how things are going. The means an 8, great. Well, we're getting these numbers up, guys, so obviously it's going to be a challenge to get you even close to 10, but we're looking forward to doing so. And then what we're going to get you to do is just think about where you are at the end. Kelly, very optimistic, is an 8 after a few days of planning. That's great. Well, that's wonderful. Thanks, Kelly. It's good to know. And as I say, we're going to talk about the challenges of the challenges and some of the solutions to leadership remotely. So these are some things. If you're on the webinar on Wednesday 7, still concerned over finance, David, totally get that. Hopefully we can help you. If there's anything help we can give you on looking at the finances, we will. I'm trying to get an accountant to come on board to one of these webinars fairly soon to answer some questions. So hopefully that'll help. Christopher, 8, all good, great, so much opportunity, great. To have time to sit back. I totally agree. It's a wonderful opportunity as well as the challenges we face. So let's crack on. If you're on the webinar Wednesday, these are the sort of the key things that we think most of us should be on with right now. Making sure we're planning both in the long term, the medium and the short term, right down to daily, because things are changing daily and weekly. But a 90-day plan for those of you that have done our 90-day planning session, it's been quite effective, and we will run that. I'm pretty sure we'll run that next Tuesday, if not the following Tuesday. We can talk about leadership today and how it changes online. Finances, we will talk about those and continue to do that. Please, if there's any of these things we need to help you with, get back in touch and we can answer your questions and do an online, obviously one of our gifted coaching sessions if that's useful. The team, how we manage a team. Our marketing, does it need to change? The message, the channels, the targets for now. How we sell might be different. How we deliver, obviously, might also be different. And us as leaders especially, are we looking after ourselves? Because how our teams and our businesses will be a direct relation to our own mentality and beliefs and challenges right now. So the more fit, healthy, more driven we are, the more fit, healthy and driven our businesses will be. So let's get into the meat of talking about the challenges of virtual leadership. Now, just so we're clear, we sort of started with the delays. We had probably about 8 minutes late, so we probably will finish. I'll try to get it on time, but we may be finishing about 1:38 or so, if that's okay. Now, something to consider for ourselves, and also for our team and our clients, our potential clients right now, is the Kubler-Ross model of what happens when we have a significant change, whatever that may be, whether it's physical, mental, emotional. In our case, it's potentially health-wise, but also economic, and the whole business marketplace. When we get a significant change, we typically go into a shock mode initially, because there's a surprise, something's happened. Now, this particular situation was probably more shocking than most, especially when we look at economic cycles. If you look at the 2008 economic crash, a lot of people could see that coming. So it wasn't quite as a shock as it was, although obviously the day that we had queues outside Northern Rock and various things going on, that was relatively shocking. Now, the challenge, what often happens is we go to a phase of denial. So we actually feel okay about it because it's actually not going to affect us. And that was probably the case if you think about COVID in December, January, when it wasn't about us. At the time, it was a Chinese problem, and then it got closer and closer to home. But the reality was very quickly, especially once it got to the UK, there isn't really anywhere to go on a denial phase. You know, we know it's an issue. We're all now quite clear that we have to move through it. Perhaps there's a little bit of denial about the requirement to self-isolate and to distance ourselves initially, but it pretty quickly went into a denial phase. Typically, our mood starts to drop and our morale and competence drops with frustration. So we know things are going to be different. We can get angry. Some people out there have been angry at various organisations, the banks, the government. I think, although this is recorded, I'd say perhaps the banks deserve it, but the government has done their best, I think, although they're perhaps, some people consider it a bit late to the party, but they have got stuck in now and we're doing the best. Now there is a likelihood, and this is really important for ourselves and our teams, that we can go into depression mode, where the mood is low, we into lacking of energy. And the quicker we can keep ourselves moving through that into an experimentation mode where we start to try new things, and I think Gary was saying the new technology, and Kelly, that there's some real opportunities there. We can start to decide on new ways of working and start to do them, and we can get our mood back to its optimal position. So think about that for yourself and how that affects yourself, but then think about your team. So you might be up, you might have gone through this curve already as the leader of your business. Some of your team might not. So one of the first thing I want you to consider is be conscious and present with the people you're working with about what their current situation is. They may still be in denial phase, or they may really be in frustration and depression. They might be frustrated with us as leaders. So be wary of where people are, because we need to manage people in different ways. So I hope that makes sense. Any questions on that before we go on? I'm just interested if anyone has any questions or if it makes sense. Cool. Just keep the questions coming in if you'd like to. And one of the things we talk about, if you fit in there, why people don't move and go into sort of either a flight or a freeze mode because of fear of what's going to happen, and fear is often caused by uncertainty. And obviously, the biggest uncertainty we have right now is not knowing how long this situation would last. But the challenge is, the reality is, it will only last for a period. And in the terms of the length of our businesses, it's probably quite a short period, even if it's months, not weeks. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have things to do and situations to deal with, but fear sometimes makes us make emotional rather than logical decisions on the long term as well as the short term. So some people out there will be shutting businesses down just because they fear that it's the end, whereas just thinking about how they can, maybe worst case, purely survive, but surviving will be a win on the other side. So we often talk about false expectation appearing real. It's not always what we think it is. I was talking with a business owner this morning who was seeing her courses. She provides courses on artistic works dwindling, and she decided that was because of various reasons, which I challenged, and she had no evidence for that. It was just a belief. So it's understanding what's the evidence. So if you have a fear or a concern or a belief, check the evidence that's related to that. Great. Okay. So, and just the idea of fear and optimism, or pessimism and optimism, which could be considered scarcity and abundance. This is again something, just a few points to check in on yourself, how you're feeling, but also how your team are feeling or behaving. Are they in scarcity? So are they feeling a victim, or are they actually being a bully, or they're just like not interested, or are they actually driving things forward? What's their physical body language and energy? What's their emotional energy, and what's their mental energy? So think about yourself first, because there's a self-learning opportunity, but then think about the people around you, because how we lead them and how we communicate needs to be relevant to where they are in their mindset right now. And if anybody would like any of these slides, we can make sure they're available. And of course, we are recording all our webinars, and they're going on our YouTube channel, so you can always review these over time. Great. Please, any comments or questions are great anytime you'd like. So just an overview of what we're going to cover. The fact that we do need to lead differently. It isn't just a case of doing the same thing in a different environment. We need to be conscious of various things. It's more an influence situation than a command situation. We used to be able to command people a little bit more, knowing that they and us knowing that we're around, so we could actually monitor what they were doing, perhaps not formally, but informally. Just the fact we were there, we'd know what they were doing. So now we need to influence people, because it's more difficult on a minute by minute, hour by hour basis to monitor progress, because we're not in the same physical location. We're going to talk about 3O model of leading through outcomes of others and ourselves. We're going to talk about technology, because obviously that's going to be key to this remote environment. We're going to talk about leadership through serving others, serving our team members, and that mindset. The other thing, we're going to consider is how do we move things forward. So we're going to take some actions. Please take lots of notes, and especially actions that you're going to take as a result of today. Any questions before we start? Anything particular on leadership or remote leadership that would be useful? Now, ultimately, some of these lessons are actually leadership lessons, and they're true irrespective of technology and the situation. But we are focusing primarily on the fact that the environment has changed for where. So key thing is leadership first. So you will find that leadership is still very relevant. It's just how we lead might need to change slightly, or to some extent. So leadership first, location second. So the location isn't that critical. In fact, the source material, which we can send you a copy of the ebook that it's come from, is written by two guys in the States. And for those of you that are probably aware, the States have had a lot more remote leadership for a very long period of time. It's such a big country that meetings by phone, online, by both web conference and teleconference have been common for quite a period of time, a lot more than here. So they're a lot more used to it. So there's lessons come from there. In fact, I remember in my business, we ended up doing some work with the States, and they were very used to using webinar technology. And this is going back 15, 20 years. It's a lot more expensive then, but they were just used to it, and phone conferencing, which we were used to driving to people's offices, because most trips were no more than 3 or 4 hours at most. Great. So leadership doesn't change. It's just it is the mechanism. So first of all, things to ask yourselves in terms of remote leadership. How do we know people are really working? How do you know they're doing what we say they're going to do? So now, this is just a how question. It may be that you know because of the results. There is the results-based leadership that just says as long as you get the results, it doesn't matter whether what time they're doing. And I personally think that's a relevant model. But maybe there's more regular check-ins, more regular points at which we check the progress. Where often when we have local leadership, we might just look over somebody's shoulder, or have a quick chat with them, or even have a chat over a coffee at the water cooler. Are people getting enough social interaction? So this is the key, which is one of the key issues. We're into isolation. Are we making sure that our teams interact socially in some way? We can and should be the driver for that. So what are we doing to make sure people are having those chats that they would normally have during the day, at the start of the day, maybe over a coffee? Are we getting good feedback? Because again, when we're local to our teams, we get feedback just by the things people say, the things they do, and even their body language. If we can't see that regularly, we need more regular feedback in different ways. And can we be as effective as when we're co-located? Well, the answer is yes, for sure, as long as we do things differently. So let's go to, that's rule 1. Rule 2. So this is this actually has come from the States, and I think it's probably slightly less in the UK up until the COVID situation, but now pretty much I would suggest it's 100% of white collar managers have at least one direct report. In fact, they've got most of their reports. So we do need to work differently. So the repercussions, as it says, it's the method may have allowed them to succeed in the past. It may have changed. So how we deliver our leadership, we need to think about how the technology can support that. And yeah, the fact that we are isolated, I mean, typically leaders are isolate themselves a little bit from their teams on a regular basis. So this is more prevalent, and we need to be seen to be leading. We need to be seen to be doing what we used to do. See, if you consider it, we cannot not communicate. We cannot not communicate. So the idea that said, well, I don't really communicate with my team. I walk into the office and I might say hello, or but then I go into my office and I'm working all day and they don't see me. Just the way you would walk through an office, the way you would say hello, good morning, the way you might say something at lunchtime is leadership. And if we're not doing that anymore, we need to replace those sorts of cues, because people can see from our body language, the tone of our voice. Are we positive? Are we negative? Are we fearful? Are we bold? So we need to replace those things. So please think about how you lead and how we can replace things that you used to do subliminally, if that makes sense. So we just need to look at the tools and how we can use those things better. So 3. So the dynamics change, and it's obvious thing to say, but how do we deal with that? So being seen is key. So getting regular webinars, web meetings, phone calls, anything to keep in front of people is key. But and therefore how we do that is quite key. Obviously face-to-face and non-verbal feedback happens. So please remember, on a web conference and a web meeting, there is verbal communication. So there's people can see your body language as well as hear your tone. So it's really key that when I'm sitting in front of people I'm having a meeting with, I look positive. I'm sitting forward, not backwards. I'm sitting up, not slouching down, and I talk with purpose and with drive. Sorry, let's just go back a second. So how else do we get the cues from a team? Because if we can't see them, or maybe we're not clear on their body language, because sometimes the webcam is only the face, how do we make sure we're getting those cues? How can you, any ideas? How can you get feedback and cues from the audience or your team that things are, of how they're thinking or feeling? Any ideas? So in this sort of environment, how would you find out how people are thinking or feeling? Thank you, Kelly. Bang on. Just ask them. Now, so this is about not just talking, it's about questions. Just say how you feel right now. It's one of the reasons at the start of every webinar, we ask you how you're feeling and to just describe it, because that allows us to get a better feeling for the situation. Now, for those of you that work with us as clients, you know that at the start of every coaching session, we have what we call a WIFL, which is what I feel like expressing. And that's really key, because how we feel is always right. What makes us feel like that is our interpretations of the situation. So if we know how people are feeling at the start of a meeting, we will perhaps better understand their behaviours within the meeting. David, use video link as you can see body language. You definitely can, David. It's really useful. So it's useful to be able to see people. Also, tonality of voice is really key. You can't. The only challenge I would say that we even with video technology we may not see is the body language of the arms and the legs, whether they're crossed or open. So we can see some things, but it's also important to get these cues. So things like asking questions, taking polls. There's some great online polls for how teams are feeling. I think there is one I remember called Tiny URL. No, that's not Tiny URL. It's Tiny something. I could perhaps find it and we'll put it in the email. But it is an anonymous team survey that you can run. And rather than run it maybe monthly or quarterly as we would normally do, maybe we need to even run it daily just to see how people are operating. But a whiffle in a meeting will help us understand how people are. Number 4, right, it's a tool, not a barrier. It enables as long as we use it right. And learning to use it effectively is going to get us the best outcome and performance. So as leaders, we need to use it well and be effective with it. And that will take learning and practice. And also patience. Obviously, we appreciate your patience given we made a slight mistake with the links, but hopefully as a leader, I'm patient of the team because we all make mistakes. Hopefully we won't make this one again. We'll work on that. Tools and technology, yeah, the most important difference when leading remotely is just understand things and the skill of using our technology. And again, guys, I know this all is probably common sense, but sometimes, as we say, common sense isn't that common. So hopefully it's just things that you just want to check in on. The 5th rule of virtual leadership, leader requires a focus on the 3O model. So this is what we talked about at the start. Outcomes. Are we clear on the outcomes we want to find? Because we may not be able to check people's progress as much or guide them to get towards the outcome. We need to be really clear on the outcome. So are we looking at others? Who else might be involved in this process that we may need to get involved with? Now, quite often when we're in a group, when we're co-located, people get involved just by hearing what's going on and offer of help and support. Now, if they're not around to offer help and support, it may not happen. So maybe making sure who we need in this particular session to discuss a problem, even if they're not directly related, would be really, really key because they won't hear remote. They won't hear when they're remote. And look at ourselves. What are our beliefs or assumptions? What's our language we're using with our team? Is it positive and empowering, or is it negative and disempowering? So, as we say, life is a mirror. Our business will be a mirror of ourselves. So please always check in on how we're feeling right now, and do everything we can to be positive, because our team need us to be positive and visionary right now to take us through the process, the current situation. So organisational outcomes. Have we got clear targets and frequent discussion with the team? Well, we're working with one of our clients this week, and that they were working remotely. It was an MD with his board, and he started to pick up a level of frustration that with him and his communication that he hadn't experienced before. And when we investigated it with him and he did with his team, what was happening was previously in board meetings he would talk things through with his team, and through the talking through, would come out with a decision. Now, having a level of lack of comfort and perhaps not using the technology effectively that he had, he would typically take information in. He was what we call a very high D. He took the information, made a decision, and passed the decision on without the explanation. So his team were getting frustrated that it felt like he was shooting from the hip rather than actually giving reasoned decisions. So now he's more clear to say, look, I've thought this through. I've looked at the pros and cons. This is what I see them as, and this is why I made this decision. Now, normally, as I said, when they were co-located, it would be obvious that he'd done that. But now they're not. He's had to change his behaviours. So team outcomes. Are we clear that every member of the team knows the outcome and how they form their part of delivering it? And how does that affect the individuals themselves? So checking in at an organisational level, a team level, and then with individuals, it's really key. So we may have organisational meetings, we have team meetings, but the one-to-one meetings that we might have had informally when we just pop by their desk or grab a coffee with them is absolutely key. And we would suggest that we get more formal with these that a formal, regular, weekly, sometimes daily check-in with teams and with individuals is going to be absolutely key. Maybe only for a couple of minutes. And with the work we're doing with coaching our clients through this, we've now gone from our normal coaching cycles of weekly or fortnightly. We're typically checking in with clients on a daily, couple of days, 2 or 3 times a week sort of situation, because things are changing so quickly, and because we need that constant communication. So focus on achieving the goals, not just setting them, because normally, previously we could set them and we could probably keep an eye on when people were struggling, and they would find it more easy to communicate with us when they were having a problem. So we need to make sure that we're helping people achieve and breaking our goals, and be really clear that our goals are smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. So we've gone through the discussion with the individual and teams, so we're all clear on how we're going to do things. So one of the most important questions has always been true in leadership and meetings, but is even more relevant when we go into a virtual world, is the craziest question we have is, do you know what you're doing? So the goal is to get 5 more of those. Do you know what you're doing? So what's the obvious answer an employee would typically give to the business owner or to the managing director? Yes, because they want to show that they know what they're doing. Now, that doesn't mean they know what they're doing. That just means that's just the answer that they feel is the right one to give. So what questions, just an idea, what would be a different way of checking somebody knew what they were doing? Any ideas there? Let's get you guys active and going, get your minds thinking. So we're in a meeting, we've set a goal for an individual or a team. How do we make sure they've got explain how you would do it? That's definitely one part of this. Thanks, Christopher. Definitely explaining how you do it will work. There's something that perhaps would enhance the situation ahead of explaining. Anyone got any ideas? So somebody said, do you need any help? That's a great question too. Both those are bang on. There's something just ahead of that. So the goal is to deliver 5 more of those, and we want to check they know how to do it. Any ideas? So it's not a test. So you're all passing with flying colours, whatever happens. Okay. So the best way to do it is to. Anything stopping it? That's getting close, Gary. It's great. You're doing a great job of thinking ideas. I would suggest the best way of doing it is say, just run me through how you're planning to approach that, or you might be planning to approach that. You might need to do a plan, but how might you do that? So you can see, are they on the right track? Okay. Do you know what to do? Great. It's still a yes/no question, David. So it's bang on. It's the challenge is people say yes. It's very difficult often sometimes to say no to their boss. No, I don't know what to do, when they're expected to do it, especially if it's related to their job. Perhaps they should know what to do. So one of the ways we can in a non-combative environment, just explain to me the first few steps you think you're probably going to take. Okay, and get them to think it through. And if they get stuck, then first is we might ask them for any help or anything stopping you, which both get questions. And then, as Christopher said quite rightly, look, would it help if I explain how I would approach the challenge? So what we're doing is, and this is true in leadership, so it's not just about remote, but it's really effective in meetings, is help people work out what they might do. So ask them first, show them second. Everyone okay with that? Brilliant. And it may be, as I say, because we need regular check-ins, we might want to chunk these things down a bit more. It might have used to be a smart goal would be, let's have 5 more clients by the end of the month. We may want to chunk that down into, let's have the average of 1.25 clients each week, and we'll check in each week rather than each month about your progress, if that makes sense. So break goals and actions potentially down in smaller chunks so we can keep checking in. Number 8, coach our team. So coaching for me is all about questions rather than about telling. And most leaders feel they can improve because most people have got to where they are in business people because they've had to make decisions and take quick actions, which normally means telling people rather than asking them. But the way we get more out of our team, especially in a remote environment, and as the team increases and grows, is by asking, and that's the key talent from asking questions. If anyone here challenged with the idea of asking questions rather than telling people, you don't have to admit it, but I suspect there's 1 or 2 people on here. It might be true of. So you typically end up telling people very quickly rather than asking them questions. If that is you don't have to put your hand up. That's okay. A simple exercise I did with the CEO of quite a large company. It was about 27 million people, about 27 million turnover at about 150 people. And it really was challenged to finding ways of asking, not telling. Is I asked him to, on a piece of paper when he's in a meeting, just start to tick off the number of times he asked the question before he gives the answer. And to be perfectly frank, for the first few weeks, we were lucky to get past one. But that self-learning, that self-frustration actually helped him to start to think about, I'll ask another question, I'll ask another question. How might you do this? What tools might you use? What options do you have? I don't know. What options might you have? So it's a great way to start to build up your coaching skills. And is it a two-way conversation? Unfortunately, this conversation is fairly one way, although hopefully I'm asking you some questions to think about things. It's one of the greatest phrases I ever heard from a coaching perspective is the truth comes out the other person's mouth. The truth comes out the other person's mouth. Any idea what that might mean? Or what that might be related to? If the truth comes out the other person's mouth. Again, it's not a test, so don't worry. Okay, well, for me, what it means is if I tell you something, it's my truth, and it'll always be my truth. If I can coach you to tell me something, then it's your truth, and you're more likely to believe it and act on it. So rather than tell you the situation, I'm going to ask you the situation and hopefully engage you with my view of the situation by asking leading questions that get us both on the same page. So if you remember that, it's very relevant in sales as well. Helping people come to their own decision is way more valuable than telling them yours. I think it was either the Dalai Lama or the Buddha said, if you tell someone something, you're just telling them something that you already know. If you ask them something, you might learn something new. I thought that was pretty cool. Ask great questions. So open questions as opposed to closed questions. The difference being a closed questions I can say yes or no to, like, do you know what you're doing? The answer typically is yes. An open question is, how might you approach that? Yeah, and always follow up to confirm the message. Great. Number 9. Now we're getting off time. We're doing okay. Communicate in ways that works best for others rather than your personal preference. Now, this is going to become more and more important, and we're going to talk at the end about using things like DISC VAC and some reporting tools we can use to help you understand the communication preferences of people. So it's really important we communicate how people want to understand rather than how we typically communicate. And again, that can be a challenging thing when we've always communicated in a particular way. Now, I'll talk about that a bit later on as well. We're going to talk about DISC at the end. The DISC stands for four modes of behaviour, which is dominant, influencer, stability, and compliant. And the more you can understand these behaviours in ourselves and then in others, the better we can communicate with people. And we're not going to do an exercise today, but we can do some work with you, especially we might even put a session on specifically on DISC over the next week or two. Who here uses the DISC, the DISC behavioural analysis tool? It's from Thomas International. A couple of similar ones would be the Insights model, I think, and there's a couple of others. I think there's a hat model, black hat, blue hat. No, I can't see it at the moment. Okay, really valuable now. And the other side of this we'll talk about later is the Christopher's used it. It's been useful. Yeah, it's a wonderful tool. We use it a lot with people we work with. The other part of this is the VAK, visual, auditory, and kinesthetic way we take information in. So one is how we communicate. The other is how we take and behave. The other is taking information in. So a lot of people see information as pictures. They actually draw a picture in their mind. Send a link, Kelly. We send you a link to. If you be more specific, we can send a link to. We're going to do some more work on. Yes, we'll send you a link on doing the DISC. Sorry, we'll definitely do that. I'll perhaps catch up with you, Kelly. Kelly, it might be useful if maybe we could catch up, maybe by phone. I think maybe we're doing that with Andy next week. But if you'd like to catch up ahead of that, Andy's got my details. I'd be more than happy to talk you through anything from today, because I know this is a really important thing for you right now. Yeah, so VAK is also visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. So some people take information in through pictures, they see things. Auditory people listen and do it through sounds and people's words and language, and kinesthetic people feel things. So understanding that means our languaging can be more effective when we know their particular mode of communication. Okay, rule 10. Leading successfully requires an understanding what people are thinking, not just doing. So we've got to understand, how they think, and I'd suggest how they feel. As you said, how people feel will affect how they think will affect how they feel, and therefore what they do. So see and be seen, and really be conscious of the impressions we make when we're online, because this is the only time people will see us during the day. Previously, if we were in an office, if we're co-located with our team, they'll see us walking around, they'll see us in our office, they can see how we're feeling and operating. So now they're not seeing that, so we've got to be visible. They've got to see us. So get in front of them, certainly daily, if not more often than that. Yeah, it doesn't happen by accident. So we are in a remote world, so building trust is really key. So it is harder to build. So 3 things to consider to get high levels of trust. Do we have a common purpose? So do we know why we're doing what we're doing? Whether that's a longer term purpose, whether it's a shorter term purpose. You guys are probably aware our longer term purpose for our Action Coach practices in York and Leeds is to create 100 millionaires and 1,000 jobs. We're well on with, I think we're on 16 or 17 millionaires, and we're at several hundred jobs. We've pivoted. The short term purpose is to save 1,000 jobs right now, and to save, I guess, to save 100 businesses. I hadn't thought of that, but our goal is to save as many things as we can right now, as opposed to just create and grow those, because we think that's most relevant right now. So we're doing everything we can to help and save and grow, because there's quite a few businesses that many businesses work with have a massive capacity and opportunity to grow as a result of the current challenges. Do we think people have the competencies now to do what we want them to do? And it may be in an online world that's changed. Do they have the competency to use the technology that they may not have used before, as an example? But there may be other competencies working in a more isolated manner, whether that's using technology or not. And are they driven enough to go the extra mile and do what we need? Now that's probably going to come from the common purpose, but we need to relate their own drives to the common purpose. The common purpose needs to give them something. So the great phrase of WIIFM, what's in it for me? So think about not just whether the common purpose fulfills our needs as owners and MDs of businesses. Does the common purpose give something to the individuals themselves? Yeah, so the more aligned we are, the more trust is built between us and them. Do we trust them? Do they trust us? Because we've got to build trust in our teams. And if you build trust, then you can anything can be achieved. A great book on trust and how trust was demonstrated massively in leadership is any of the books you might want to read on Sir Ernest Shackleton, who's my personal hero as a leader, and his adventures in the Antarctic, and how he survived a catastrophe and brought all his men home in a situation would, in all honesty, was very unlikely to do so. Shackleton's Way is the book I read, which was taking management lessons from Shackleton's experiences. But any book on Shackleton will tell you the story. But the book Shackleton's Way is great because it takes the learnings out as well. So I can strongly recommend that. I don't know, I can't remember the author, but I think one of the authors is one of his descendants, actually. But anyway, have a look out for that book. It's a great book. It's got some of the well-known photos from Shackleton's expedition. Okay, so look at the results that we need as a leader. Then look at how we're going to communicate that for most effectively. Okay, so richness and scope, so that's depth and breadth. Richness might be one-to-one. So if we communicate one-to-one, we're going to get the message across more clearly and more directly for that individual. But obviously, we may be limited by how much we can do of that in any particular working day or week. So while getting down and getting a one-to-one with somebody who's going to be valuable, we need to look at how we can broaden the message to the team. A team communication on a regular basis can be valuable, but how can we do that in a way that's going to mean we get the best effects and best results from our teams? So think about what you need to do and what depth of richness and detail and drive do we need to communicate with. 13. Yeah, maximize the tools and capability or minimize your effectiveness. So you work out what technology works for you guys. I'm sure you're aware, use Zoom, and it's proven to be really, really effective, both as well, hopefully you would agree, as a communication tool. The other thing I've been really impressed with from a technology perspective is I've used 2 or 3 different technologies over the last couple of weeks, and our connection here at my home is still over phone lines, and yet the quality typically of the connection has been pretty good. We've dropped out a couple of times, but in general, it's been pretty good. So it's what technology fits your need best, and then practice will improve our performance. And obviously, there's a number of different technologies we can use. I suggest we get out there into the marketplace. Many of us will have these in place already, but again, I would suggest quite strongly, if it's not working for you, find a better solution. The cost of these technologies is, in my opinion, low enough that it's worth changing if the one we've got doesn't work. Zoom, as example, is the Pro Edition, which allows us to webcast up to 100 people, is £12 a month. So the cost of having that is nothing compared to the value that we can offer by using something that works really well. Okay, 14. Now, again, this is just communication. Seek feedback. If we're not having feedback, as I think the great phrase, feedback is the breakfast of champions, always look for feedback and evidence. So feedback from our team and evidence of the outcome and the result being achieved. So what evidence do we have? Can we read to know things are happening? Yeah, we might want to build up a group of trusted advisors in our team. It'd be nice to think we trust everybody, and I like to think I do, but you might trust individuals more, especially in particular areas of the business. And it might be people that are the thermometer for how things are happening. And that doesn't necessarily mean your managers. It could be someone in a team that you've known for a long time that you trust to tell you things that you need to know. If that makes sense. And it's useful while not being led by their opinions. Clearly, as leaders, we can't be led by what a trusted individual tells us. We need to use that as evidence and information to make a rounded decision. Open-ended questions, as we said, is really effective to make sure that we know people know what they're doing, or feeling that they've got the best approach, or the approach we align with. Yeah, be patient with people. I think these technology at the moment, we found, requires us to be a bit more patient. There is often a bit of a lag in some of these technologies between speaking and receiving, and it's just accepting that will happen. So maybe we need to speak more slowly, listen a bit more, listen for a slightly longer period of time than we might do normally, and wait for our responses accordingly. So yeah, richness is really key. And you know, my suggestion is quite often it's short communications, short conversations more frequently than one long conversation, because people, when they're remote, when they're co-located, you can have a longer conversation, and knowing that somebody can just get up, you know, a couple of hours later and say, oh, by the way, when you said this, what did you mean? And at the moment, people are still feeling a little bit uncomfortable to actually have another web call just to ask a simple question. So, and the challenge with a text-based question, whether it's text, whether it's an email, or whether it's something like an online tool like Slack or those things, is there's no tonality in texts. So we can we tend to interpret texts, the tonality of text, and that's not always correct. So the more we can do by voice and visually, the better. So your beliefs and self-talk. What belief and self-talk do you have as a leader and about your business right now? Now, many of us are challenged in the current situation, but we need to check in with our self-talk, because our self-talk will have a direct reflection on how we talk to others. So yeah, so our self-talk is also driven by what we believe to be true. So if you believe the future is incredibly bright, and several of you have said it is, which is wonderful, that's how you will self-talk, and that's how you will talk to others. If you believe it's not bright, that's how you'll self-talk, and that's how you will talk to others. So it's really important to have a healthy image. And to some extent right now, guys, I'd suggest there is an element, if we have to, we're faking it before we make it. Our team need to feel that we're confident and driven to a bright future. But where possible, align that back in with the self-talk. So these are things to be considering, you know, that won't be helping us right now. If these are things you find you catching yourself saying to yourself, you're an idiot, what a stupid thing that was. Oh my goodness, how could you possibly have done this? Well, just the fact that I can't do this, I'm struggling. And there is a massive challenge of imposter syndrome going on with many leaders. I'm not good enough, and someone's going to find out at some point. Well, we wouldn't be in these positions if someone hadn't selected us, whether that's someone else or that's ourselves. So let's just accept that we're trusted by ourselves and by others and get on with it, because our team need us to lead them right now. So if you do have a self-talk monster, I'm not going to ask you guys if you do have one. I'm going to ask your alter ego. Perhaps they could type in yes. But if you do have that self-talk monster, just check your assumptions. Check the evidence. Check the evidence. If we believe things are failing, what's the evidence for that? What's the evidence to believe something's happening? It's important to have someone to offload to outside the organisation. Krista, I think you bang on, and you know, it's lonely being a leader. And really, it's difficult to share our fears and our challenges and our self negative beliefs. Is it important? Sorry, Christopher. It's a question. Is it important to have someone to offload to outside the organisation? I believe so in most cases, because as leaders, if we do have fears and concerns, and it's okay to have them, it's really difficult to share those with our teams unless we have an absolute, a very high level of not trust, honesty, trust, but trust that they won't take those beliefs on themselves, because they really need us to be positive. So we do need to get rid of some of this negative talk sometimes just by telling somebody else. So somebody outside the organisation is really valuable. Obviously, it's something that we do a lot with people, and it's just taking that on board and just saying that's okay. It's okay to feel like that, but then these questions are really relevant at the bottom. So if you have a friend or somebody that you can share this with, do this too. Get them to check your assumptions. Why do you believe that's the case? What's the evidence for that? What's the evidence for that? Most people, I was with somebody this morning that was saying, I believe I've seen my business disappear in front of my eyes. And the reality was, when I asked the questions about the situation, was the business hadn't disappeared. Their customers were just unable to buy right now what they had in the way they were currently selling it. That was it. There was no reduction in people's desire to buy. They just couldn't buy right now. No, but the feeling was the business was failing, and it wasn't, in my opinion. Yeah, accept positive feedback as valid. So please ask for positive feedback from people, and just accept whatever they think is true for them, and it may be true. So before we defend ourselves, just think about why that might be true. More importantly, why they might have given us that feedback. That it's important to analyse these things before we get into a naturally defensive situation. Yeah, and get help. And I guess that's, you know, part of Christopher's question. Just ask other people, and the benefit being outside the organisation is that person's direct livelihood isn't going to be dependent on the leader and the owner and the business's success. So they can probably give you much more effective, pragmatic feedback. So please find someone that can help you. Now, right now, we're here to help. So our gifted coaching sessions is, if it's just an opportunity to offload right now some of the fears and the concerns you've got, please take advantage of them. And we'll offer those out at the end of an email as a result of this webinar again. Please take advantage. We're really enjoying the fact we're able to help so many businesses right now. So please take advantage of them. Yeah, please accept you can't do it all. Superman, superperson syndrome is a big syndrome for many of us, is thinking nobody can do it as well as me, which might be true, but if you fall into that trap, you'll never actually have an effective, empowered team. So people don't need to do it as well as us. They just need to do it well enough. But the reality is many people out there can do what we do better than us. And that also is a challenge some of us have. So yeah, we've got to be responsible for everything, but we don't have to do everything. So this is an opportunity to look at how we work, because the remote environment might change that. And so how we've typically worked might need to change, not just the communication protocols, but and the technology we use. So it may be that reporting cycles, meeting cycles, just the whole workflow might need to change, and potentially for the better. Technology can be a massively empowering tool. And we, working remotely with my team, we're using obviously this technology, but things like our CRM tools, our customer relationship management tools, more effectively, because it's something we can all access together at the same time. Whereas when we were co-located, there was probably a little bit more of how's that getting on, how's that getting on. So we're actually way more organised now because we've had to be. Yeah, look at delegation, and I think maybe we'll do a session on time management and delegation over the next couple of weeks to help people think more effectively about delegating to others. Because the challenge often is A, identifying what to delegate, but B, being concerned maybe about people's time and capability. So rule 17, we're cracking through. Balance your duties to be a remarkable long distance leader. So balance your priorities, I should say. Yeah, know the difference between self-preservation. So the flip side of this is making sure we look after ourselves. We can't be an effective leader if we're not looking at our own personal health, physical health, mental health, emotional health. So we need to self-preserve. So please make sure you take time for yourself to be an effective leader, but obviously not bordering on the point of selfishness. We've got to give other people our time. So booking time in with everybody is probably important. Yeah, check in with your values and make sure everyone knows your values, because these are the things that will create common purpose. Yeah, so there's an obvious phrase to say that there is no such thing as time management, because no one can manage time. There's only self-management. It's how we manage ourselves to use time effectively is the most important thing. So think about how you can manage time effectively. We'll run a session within the next few webinars on time management just to see and check in with people if that's something that would be useful. Yeah, so it's choice management or self-management, I'd suggest. 18, ensure your leadership development prepares long-distance leaders. So not just our own leadership, but we need to build leaders within our business. Effective leaders build leadership in others. So what's our culture? What sort of behaviours and skills do we need to develop? And what's our plan? So obviously we recommend 90-day planning cycles. Many of you have been on those already, but what's your plan for developing your teams and your leadership within your teams so that you can delegate more effectively, more and more in your business? And the current opportunity for many of us having less work to do of the doing of the day-to-day work gives us a lot more time to plan. So let's plan the future. Let's plan the structure and the leadership and the leadership teams of the future. 19, we're going back all the way. Rule 19 is to go all the way back to rule number 1. Think about leadership first and location second. So leadership rules are very valid. So if anyone would like any ideas on great books on leadership, we can provide those. As I say, the Shackleton's Way book I would strongly recommend, and there's several others. But leadership first, then all we need to do in this environment, this new environment, is think about how that relates. How will we deliver that using the current situation and the technology? So we might just need to do the same thing in a different way. Our leadership has got us where we are. So I wouldn't suggest we change our leadership style, just our leadership delivery potentially. Okay, and finally, number 20, leaders keep learning. One of the biggest traits of almost every successful person is the need and desire to learn. So a couple of things I'd suggest you take on board for your learning right now as a result of today. If you'd like the source ebook, it's about 10 pages, I think, which is the book, The Long Distance Leader by Eikenberry and Turnbull. We can provide you with that. So if you, just let us know, say yes in the chat, and we'll send that out to you. And it's great, it just gives you a little bit more background on some of the points we've talked about. I strongly recommend for those that haven't, or even if you have, re-upgrade. Kelly, yeah, we'll get that sent out to you. Work on, I think, DISC, VAC, and motivations, David will get that out to you, are going to be really key. So if you'd like, I think we'll plan a session on DISC and VAC. If anyone would like the report, we can produce a report for people. So if anyone would like one, just let us know as a result of today's webinar. We can do a DISC report for you guys and take you through it. Let us know if that will be useful, and we'll just work out how we would do that from a commercial perspective. But let's get leading, guys. Leadership is one of the most important things that we do. Nathan, yes, great. David, brilliant. We'll do that. So keep an eye out for the email that we're going to send out results today, and we'll just give you the links to select some of these things. I'll confirm that with the guys, and we'll look at when we're going to do. I think we'll do a session on DISC and VAC, and for those of you that want to get a report, we can get that happening. But leadership, the key for me is don't change necessarily what you do. You might want to upgrade your style anyway, but don't change it because it's got you where you are, but maybe change the delivery through the technology. Be conscious of that. So coming up to finish up, we're about on time. Is anyone would like to come to the 90-day planning session? I'm keen to get numbers for next week because I've got a couple of people. I'd like to have at least 5 or 6 to come aboard. Is anybody not done a 90-day planning session that would like to? So this is the idea of planning the next 13 weeks of activity to see us through, hopefully potentially through to the other side of the COVID situation, or at least to a point where we can see what's going on. Can't see any yeses yet, but that's okay. Yes, sure, Namin, if you haven't yet, that's great. That would be good. Well, we'll probably do it. So please keep an eye on the emails, both the end of today, but also early next week. Come back to us on that, David. Yeah, please. Yeah, if we do it, it's very likely it will. We may need to change the day. Sorry, we'll get back to you on that. But please keep an eye on your emails and respond to them and let us know, because if we've got enough people, we'll do it. I'm going to ask you and urge you at the end, before you come off this call or as a result of this call, before you do anything else, think about 5 things you're going to do differently and take action on them. If you don't, then you might, hopefully you've learned a few things today, but if you don't put an action list, it's unlikely anything's going to happen as a result of today. So any questions before we finish and follow up? Has anybody got any questions on that, or any comments? How valuable has that been as a quick run through the issue of virtual and remote leadership? Good, thank you, Kelly. I'm glad it's been useful. An idea for a session will be on starting up your business again. Great. Okay, David. Yeah, well, we're going to look at that running up phase, that warm up phase, perhaps a little bit later once we know we've got that situation to come, if that's okay. Good, useful for you, Andy. That's brilliant. I'm pleased for that, and hopefully you and Kelly can maybe get together and just put your learnings and actions. Planning a new process before reopening. It's a great opportunity. I mean, just to get, it's a bright new world. So what if we were to do things differently? There's a great question we're asking people right now is, if you were to start your business today, how would it be different? And maybe that's what we need to do. Gary, I'm glad that's been useful for you. And thank you, Christopher, for your kind words. Great. Wonderful. Well, let's just see if there's anything else left to do. Again, please, we've got the 15 gifted coaching sessions. They're typically half an hour. I think we've run about 8 or 9 this week, and they've been really well received. We've just got people getting going on doing some actions. We've challenged some mindsets. We'd love to do this. It's just really pleasing to help as many people as we can right now, because I think, and just get people's mindsets back onto the future. These webinars, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So just put that in your diary, 12:30 every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Come on. I think we might just upgrade and just check the links, but we'll get those sent out again. But please, we always send an email out before the event. So always just check that email, and that typically will have the right link. Apologies for today, but mistakes happen. Okay, so before we go, just a quick, how are you feeling? What's your feeling? What's your number? And what was it from earlier on? If you'd be kind enough, it's good just to give us a bit of feedback on how valuable these things are. 8.5, David, I think you're at 8. So I'm going to take that as a plus. On my reckoning, that's about a 5%, yeah, 80%. 8.25, Christopher, thank you. 7, now 8, thank you, Andy. That's great to hear. Wonderful. Was a 7? Oh, you were a 7 to a 8. David was a 7. Where were you, David? Thank you. I think David was an 8.5 from a 7. Thank you. That's great. 7.5 was 7 early. Thanks, Nathan. Little bit, yeah. It's I think this one today was very much about doing stuff, but hopefully, if it's helped a little bit, that's wonderful. Okay. On that note, I'm going to thank you for your time again. Anybody in last minute questions, we'll stay on for just a minute if you want to post anything. Good to think about communication with staff, David. Yeah, really, really key right now, because they'll be putting their beliefs in place. Because if we don't put the evidence of, by telling them where we're going and the evidence of that, they'll put their beliefs in place about the future. And they'll just be reading what they want to read that supports those beliefs. So we need to change their beliefs, or at least make sure their beliefs are in line with ours. So please tell them what you believe. Please tell them what your values are. And most importantly, tell them the vision of the other side of this. Self-Talk, Gary. There's a great book, actually. I've just been recommended this morning. If you'd like to listen to it, I've had a recommendation. I've not read it myself, but I've just downloaded it on audio. And it is, if you'd like to take a note of it, he says, trying to pick up his Audible book. It's available on either as hardback from Amazon, but it is on Audible. It's called Self-Talk Secrets by Stuart Wallace. and we had a review of it this morning in our coaches group, and it's really interesting to talk about our self-talk and how we can actually empower ourselves better and make sure our self-talk is, make sure we believe our positive self-talk. We call that verbalization, and our I am statements, making sure we're saying things that we believe. Cool. On that note, I don't think we've got any other questions. Sorry, scarcity to abundance. Would be useful to have your thoughts on supporting staff with moving from left to right. Yeah, Kelly, great phrase. So scarcity to abundance, a lot of that for me is about being clear on our vision, both long-term and short-term. So where are we going? Because the scarcity is, as coming back to something that I think David was talking about or asking about. If we don't tell people where they're going, they'll make up their own mind. So and their evidence will be what's happening on the news, on Facebook, on social media. Everything's going wrong. If they're reading messages, and most of us are reading negative messages at the moment, that's their reality. We've got to reset that reality with where we believe it to be true. Now, I know, speaking with Andy, our discussions are very much about the positives that have happened and are happening, and the other side of this, and the opportunities that exist. So the more we talk about our vision, our values, and our purpose, the more that's the evidence people will start to use. Whatever's happening in the outside world, this is what we're doing here. So getting them from left to right first is then just making sure you're touching base on the regularly to see where they are, and then identifying perhaps specific outcomes for individuals. But life's a mirror. Your teams will be a reflection of how you believe too. So think about yourself. Anybody else? Otherwise, we'll thank you very much, and we will see you hopefully on Monday, guys. So Monday we've got our webinar on. We'll do a catch up on where we are. We've got some more information coming on board, and we'll be talking about some topics that will help us again take us through from not just surviving but thriving in the future few weeks. So thanks so much, and we will see you on Monday at 12:30. Thanks, everybody.